Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris. I'm an alcoholic. Kevin, thank you for asking me to join you all. This is a big meeting, and I'm really pleased to be here. So Kevin was very specific. He told me that for the next 3 hours I was to share my experience, strength, and hope, and I'll do my best at that. So on or around December 28th, 1989, the grace of God separated me from alcohol. It was an absolute mess. And I use December 28th, 1989, not that I'm sure it was a very gray period of time, but that's the date that I claim. Since my second day in Alcoholics Anonymous, I've been continuously sponsored. Since I had 10 months sober, I've been continually sponsoring. I always make an effort to have a home group. I try to be of service wherever possible, and I'm incredibly grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous today. So alcoholism. What is alcoholism? While I was dying of alcoholism, I didn't have a clue what it was. Yeah, you could have made an argument with me, and I would have agreed with you that I drank too much. I mean, everybody knew that, but I didn't understand, what alcoholism was. I didn't understand the dynamics of this thing that's physical, spiritual, mental. And I didn't learn about that until I'd been in Alcoholics Anonymous a while. But I'll go back in time a little bit. So there's a great story in the book Alcoholics Anonymous. It says this individual was pretty much normal, except he had a nervous disposition. So I can remember having a nervous disposition from like day one. And really, what it was a level of anxiety I had. As we mature, it becomes self-centered fear. But all I knew was I was uncomfortable with a lot of different situations, and I was uncomfortable with myself. I didn't feel confident in many situations, and that started at a very young age. So the first time I can remember really feeling this anxiety was it was I guess it was 1960, and my mother came into the room. I'm about 5 years old, and she said, "Get your stuff ready. It's your first day of kindergarten." And listen, I'd heard about this kindergarten thing. I kind of knew it was coming. Some of the older kids had done it. I wasn't really looking forward to it, but I knew I needed to get myself together. And sure enough, we went out to the car and she drove me across town. She opened up the door of the car. She pointed at the school building. It was down a hill from the parking lot. And she said, "That's where your classroom is going to be. I'll come back later today to pick you up." She closed the door and she drove away. Now, I was crippled with this anxiety. I remember standing up on the hill and I'm looking down the hill, and the kids are already playing with each other. They're already friends. They're playing kickball and tag. And I'm standing up on the hill looking down, feeling like a dick. You know what I mean? Just not what if they make fun of me? What if somebody beats me up? I'm just thinking all this stuff. Now, I really wanted to run home and just call a mulligan on this whole kindergarten thing. Who came up with this? This is not going to work for me. Maybe it works for those kids who were playing tag, but it's not going to work for me. But I knew it would be a huge to do if I went flying home and said I ran away. So what I did was I did what I learned to do for the next couple of decades. I learned to do this, to act like I wasn't totally uncomfortable, to pretend everything was okay. And I went down and I did the kindergarten thing. Now, why does this relate? Why is this part of my alcohol story? part of my alcohol story because you know what would have made that whole kindergarten experience so much better? A pint of vodka, right? The problem was they weren't serving kindergartners back in 1960. That was the problem. I didn't have any alcohol to make me feel comfortable. And I didn't have any alcohol to make me feel comfortable for many years. So let's fast forward. Let's move to 1970. I think it's 1969, 1970. I'm about 13 years old. And me and a couple of my friends decide we're going to cut school and we're going to go back to my house. You know, my father had died by this time. My mother was off, working. And I always had the house to myself if I did something like that. So we're going to cut school. We're going to go back to my house and we're going to get drunk because it's going to be cool to get drunk. And we heard a lot of the older kids talking about it, and so we're gonna be these daring, kids and go get drunk. And so we do. We go back to my house. I remember the two guys that I was with. They were both named John. Neither one of these guys ever became alcoholic. Neither one of these guys ever became problem drinkers, for God's sake. This was just something that, we were doing. And I remember taking a bottle of Four Roses whiskey down from the shelf in the closet, blowing the dust off of it, taking 3 big water glasses and filling them up with this Four Roses whiskey and passing them out. Now, I want to tell you what the two guys named John did, because that was, that's different. I still don't relate to what they did. They had about half of their glass and then they pushed it back and they said, "No more for me. I've had enough." You ever drink with people that have enough on you? If you're an alcoholic, you know how annoying that is, right? So they pushed their glass back. Now, what happened to me, because I had the alcoholic bullet, I believe it's genetic, folks. I believe you can drink yourself into alcoholism, sure, if that's your experience. But I believe that the science is in. There's a genetic component to this thing called alcoholism. And I had it in a big way, because how I reacted to that alcohol was I drank my glass, I drank their glasses, I put a hurting on that bottle, and I went into a blackout, and I came to in a field about 6 hours later with all that missing time. And I was violently ill for 2 days, just wanting to die illin, from what this alcohol did to me, because it poisoned me, right? Now, I want to explain to you what was going through my mind the 2 days that I was sick. I was saying to myself, I'm going to do this a lot. Now, why in the so this substance made me deathly ill. Like, why in the world would I consider ever touching it again? Let me tell you why I would consider ever touching it again. When that second glass of alcohol went down, something happened to me. Something happened to me that I'd never experienced before. And the best way I can describe it to you is like this. You know what happened to me? This. And all that tension and all that anxiety and the scared kindergartner just disappeared. And all of a sudden I had confidence. And all of a sudden I was in the right place with the right people doing the right thing. And wasn't this cool? Guys, we're going to do this. We're going to do this all the time. This is great. This is great. And I felt like I'd never felt before. The self-centered fear was gone. An unbelievable level of confidence and connection to my life and my world. I felt like I was in the right place, and now that feeling was so significant that while I was projectile vomiting, for 2 days, I was saying to myself, this is a tool. This alcohol is a tool that I must learn how to use. And I understood that it would probably be a bad idea to drink warm Four Roses whiskey the next time I drank. So I started asking the kids, what do you drink? What do you drink? And And there were some certain things that 13-year-olds drank at that period of time. There was a company that had a fine line of products. And that company was named Boone's Farm, right? So a lot of the kids would drink the Boone's Farm apple wine or the Strawberry Hill. So I started drinking that stuff, and then I transitioned from that to the Southern Comfort and the Blackberry Brandy and the schnapps, and stuff like that. And then finally, because of a couple of really great, the Blackberry Brandy and the Southern Comfort was hard liquor, and I wasn't good with that, right? I mean, there would be problems when I drank hard liquor. So even when I was like 14, so what happened was I started to drink beer, and from maybe the age 15 on, I started to make an effort to control and enjoy the way I drank, with a lot of periods of time where it went out of control and I did tragic, embarrassing, dangerous things. Okay. So I was forever trying to get the mix right, get the alcohol right, get the non-conference approved, additives at the right level, what I mean? And so from maybe age 15 on, I was doing a balancing act with impairing myself, and I look back and it's just nuts. And most normal people that would look at me back during that period of time would think I'm crazy, because there's a level of insanity that runs through alcoholism. But for me to be able to do this, um, I, I had to have the alcohol, right? I just did. I drank about 19 years, and I had a lot of problems with alcohol. I had a lot of consequences. DUIs. I got a lot of DUIs. I crashed 9 cars in drunken blackouts, and even after crashing the 9th car, I would have tried to convince you that I was a good drunk driver. I wouldn't, I drive better. I have more confidence when I've had a couple of drinks. I would try to convince you of that, which is insane. I used to say I've never crashed a car drunk. I only crash them when I pass out. And again, being a blackout drinker driving cars, you never know when you're going to pass out while you're driving. And I was thrown out the front window one time. I was thrown through the passenger window one time. One time I spun around and hit a bridge going backwards and got thrown out the back window of a car. How I didn't die of misadventure, I have no idea. There were so many close calls with death, because when you drink like that, it's just that, there's no sense. There's no sense of preservation. There's no fear of consequences. It's just let's go to this city. That kind of an attitude. So I had a lot of these consequences. And if you were to take an Excel graph and you were to start at 1969 and move all the way to 1989, you would be able to plot the descent of everything good in my life because of this alcoholism. You would have seen, physically I deteriorated. My ability to have relationships deteriorated. My ability to be employed deteriorated. My ability to drive cars deteriorated. My ability to have friends deteriorated, all very predictably as I moved along the alcoholic continuum. But I'm telling you, until the very, very end, you could not have convinced me that it was alcoholism. You could not have convinced me that alcohol is at the heart of this whole thing. I'm the kind of guy who comes out of a blackout with a summons in my back pocket for a DUI, and I say to myself, I gotta stop driving. You know what I mean? I'm not considering not drinking. I had a relationship with alcohol at this point in time. whether it was conscious or unconscious, it was more important than my family. It was more important than my daughter. It was more important than my job. It was more important than my friends. Whether it was conscious or unconscious, I allowed nothing to interfere with my ability to purchase and consume alcohol. And it got worse and worse and worse and worse. Now, here's basically what happened. I started to come to the realization that the amount of alcohol I was putting in my body was probably going to kill me pretty soon, because here's the velocity of my drinking in the last 5 years. I would buy a quart of vodka or a quart of bourbon, and I would start drinking. It's say 4 o'clock in the afternoon. By 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I was drunk as a hoot owl. By 6 o'clock, I was in a blackout, and by 7 o'clock, I was passed out on the floor. That was the velocity of my alcoholism toward the end, right? And that impacts everything. You don't go on a date. You don't go drinking at a bar, when your alcoholism has that kind of horsepower. You know what I mean? What you do is you hunker into a room and you hope you don't burn the house down with your cigarettes, like I did twice. So that's what it was like. And my life was getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Fewer people, fewer things, fewer people, places, and things were getting small. You didn't have to tell me to keep away from people, places, and things when I got sober. I didn't have any left. My life got so small. So one day I had to go to an outpatient program to get my driver's license back for one of my DUIs. And it was just crazy. It's so funny. This particular outpatient, you know what they did for 3 hours twice a week? They put you in group. You ever do group where you sit around in a circle and everybody just talks about themselves? It was the most bizarre thing. And I couldn't stand. I was so mad. I'm sitting there. Oh, listen to this guy share. Oh, God, what a hypocrite. Oh, listen to this idiot. What a loser. Why don't you just shut up? Why don't you just shut up? I want to share. That was my experience in this outpatient thing, but I learned one thing. I learned one thing in that outpatient group, because it was at a hospital, that the fifth and the sixth floor of this hospital was a lockdown inpatient alcohol rehab. And if you ever get really bad, you can get locked up there and you can get treated for alcoholism. Okay. Now, a bunch of years go by, and finally, I just called this place up. I'm desperate. By this time, I'm trying to stop drinking. In the last 4 years of my drinking, I'd try to stop drinking. And this is what it would look like. I would come to in the morning wearing the clothes I passed out in the night before. I'd stagger into the bathroom. You throw some water on my face, do my vomiting calisthenics, stagger out to the car. I had $100 car, and go off to my terrible job, just swearing to God, today's the day. I don't ever want to feel this bad again. I swear today is the day I'm going to quit drinking. I mean it. I know I've said this 732 times before, but there's something different about today. Today, I mean it. I know I mean it. And I did mean it. And what would happen is, halfway through the day, I'd get half a sandwich down. I'd rehydrate from just being dehydrated from the alcohol. I'd get rehydrated, and quitting time is around 4:30. And around 3 o'clock, I'd start to think, that decision that you made, to give up alcohol like forever, that might be an overreaction. That, as a matter of fact, we might have to modify that decision a little bit. And by the time 4:30 came, I had modified that decision to go right back to the liquor store and start the whole cycle all over again. Folks, I was caught up in powerlessness. Now, what powerlessness is it's an inability to separate from alcohol on my own. Absolute inability. Okay. I don't care what the consequences are. I don't care how much I don't want to drink. I don't have the power to stay separated from alcohol. And I don't have the power to control it when I'm drinking it. When I start drinking, move the furniture back, turn the phone off. Nothing is going to stop me from consuming as much alcohol as I possibly can, whether I think that's what I'm doing or not. That's what my experience was. So I sign myself into this 28-day treatment center. I get treated for alcohol. And what do you think they had in the inpatient group? So 4 times a day we're going to group, and people are sharing about themselves. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh God. Finally, I get out of there. And they told me 2 things. They told me 2 things to do. They said, we recommend that you go to some AA meetings. And then they said, we recommend that you come back to outpatient. So, folks, this is how much I wanted to separate from alcohol, how desirous I was of getting sober. I did that. I didn't want to do it. I couldn't stand it. I went back to group, you know what I mean? And I went to Alcoholics Anonymous, which I thought was packed with a class of lame people that I had never associated with in my life. And I couldn't stand any of it. But I'm doing it because I want to stay away from alcohol. Alcohol is killing me. So I get about 2.5 months sober doing that, going to outpatient and going to AA. And on the way to an AA meeting one time, the thought crosses my mind that I'm not really plugging into this AA. I'm not really integrating into this. I'm not really participating in the outpatient. I've got an idea. If I buy a gallon of vodka and I drink it, what it will do is it will reconvince me of this commitment I've made to sobriety. And that'll give me the extra push I need to really plug into this recovery thing. So, folks, I bought a gallon of vodka and drank it to improve my sobriety. That's what I did. Now it made sense to me at that time. I'm drinking it. I'm drinking the glass. I'm like, wow, this is. I'm pretty smart to have thought of this. Drink another glass. This is really the right way to go. I'm going to go back and share this in a meeting that everybody should do this. And by the time the 3rd glass of alcohol started to go down, intoxication washed over me, and I realized the enormity of the mistake I had made. The beast is now awake in me, and the beast is going to drag me around as long as the beast wants to. I've put alcohol back in my body. The craving is going to be back on me. Not that I knew what that was. I just knew that I wasn't going to stop, right? And it was a mess for about 7 months. It was a mess. Finally, there was incidents. How we have incidents. There was an incident between Christmas and New Year's of 1989 with my family, and it was so horrific to me that I could be that, because I was getting really violent, right? That I could be that guy to do that thing. That what I did was I was desperate. I had a willingness that was born of desperation. I went back into Alcoholics Anonymous after going through 3 days of DTs where I didn't sleep. All I did was hallucinate that there was stuff on me. I got in my car and I went back to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I started my sobriety journey. It was the day before New Year's, I believe, 1989. Now, for about 6 months, I got a sponsor on the second night. My sponsor said, Chris, I'm only going to tell you to do one thing. And that one thing is, I want to see you at a meeting every night. I lived in an area where that was, within 10 miles, there was 50 meetings a week, right? So I could do that. And he said, I want to see you at a meeting every night until I tell you to stop. So those are my marching orders. And that's what I did. I started to go to meetings. I'm so glad that I developed that discipline. of meeting attendance because I've seen so many people that don't have it. I've seen so many people that become inconsistent with meeting attendance, like when the heat's on, they'll go 4 or 5 times a week. And then a month later, you don't see them anywhere. I became disciplined at going to meetings because of that, because that's what I thought I needed to do to treat my alcoholism. That's what my sponsor was telling me to do. It's my sponsor's job to keep me sober. So I'm about 8 months sober at this period of time, and I'm starting to feel a little better. Listen, I started to feel a little healthier. I started to eat real food, and the brain started to clear a little bit. I started to, feel a little better, and I started to make some friends, and you know what I mean? And things kind of looked up. And I started to date a girl. Just the normal stuff with somebody with around a year, and I experienced what you would describe. Some people would describe as a sober bottom. Some people would describe it as a second surrender. Some people would describe it as a nervous breakdown. But it was a situation that just clobbered me. Now, just prior to this happening, I'd made a friend. I'd made a good friend. I'm still friends with him today. Radio Shack Mike was his name. Everybody was nicknamed basically because I was nicknaming him, and this guy was Radio Shack Mike, and what Radio Shack Mike was, he was a very pious guy. Okay. And what I mean by that is, like, whatever spiritual book he read last is what the most important thing in the world is. You know what I mean? Like, so one day he'd come up to me and he'd go, Chris, do you have a pyramid over your bed? Chris, I put a pyramid over my bed and my life's never been the same. My life's never been the same. A week later, it would be crystals. Chris, do you have crystals? Do you know what crystals can do? I'm going to get you some crystals. I'm going to have to get you the strong ones. And then next day, said, Chris, do you do affirmations? I'm doing these affirmations, and you wouldn't believe the change I feel in my life. Now this guy Radio Shack Mike is getting spiritual and happy. Now I understand today why he was getting spiritual and he was getting happy. Because he wasn't an alcoholic. He came into Alcoholics Anonymous because he got busted with an 8-ball. And his lawyer told him, you should go to treatment, and then go to AA and get everybody to write the letters to the judge. I mean, he had a plan, right? He admitted to me he tried alcohol maybe 6 times in his entire life. And I'm Mike, I'm an alcoholic, and I made friends with this guy. Now, so one day he comes up to me and he gives me this set of 90-minute tapes. And I don't trust him by this time, right? Because I tried the affirmations, and trying to treat alcoholism with affirmations is like trying to stop a semi with a cobweb. You know what I mean? Because I got a bad case of alcoholism. Yeah, I'm not in AA because I got busted with an 8-ball. I'm in AA because I'm dying of alcoholism. So not that I judge, but he gives me this 8 90-minute tapes, and he goes, I didn't really care for these guys too much, but something tells me you're gonna be interested in them. And what he did, this is 1990. He gives me a set of Joe and Charlie Big Book Workshop set, right? And I start to listen to it. And the first thing that happens to me is I get really annoyed. These guys are talking about lists, and they're talking about inventories, and they're talking about paying the money back, and they're talking about prayers and meditation. And maybe that's how they do it in Arkansas. But in New Jersey, we share, because I'm going to discussion meetings, right? I don't know any better. And I threw the tapes to the side. Now, I told you I had the nervous breakdown, right? What happened was the girl I was going out with and I broke up. I lost my job, and Florida was catching up to me because I had fled to avoid prosecution. And all this stuff is happening, in 1 week. And I did not have the spiritual or emotional capacity to be able to deal with it. I couldn't deal with this stuff, right? So I remember going over to my sponsor's house, not able to talk. I remember going, he's like, come on in, what's going on? Finally he goes, Chris, say a prayer, go home, say a prayer. I'll see you in the meeting tonight. And he shoves me out. Now, these Joe and Charlie tapes, they annoyed me, right? But they also haunted me because these two guys spoke with such authority and such experience. And I didn't like what they were saying, but I listened to what they were saying. And here's basically the conclusion I had to come to. I brought those tapes back out. I started listening to them, and I started to do what they said to do. I blew the dust off my big book, and I started to go through the steps, listening to the Joe and Charlie tapes. And it was difficult for me. And I'll tell you why it was difficult for me to do this. Because if Joe and Charlie were right, every single person in every meeting I was going to was wrong, including my sponsor. That was what I was up against. How'd you like to be up against that? And so there was a ton of resistance. But for some reason, I just decided to just go ahead. I didn't want to feel bad anymore, right? I didn't go through these steps out of virtue. I went through these steps because I didn't want to suffer anymore with this. They call it in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, the bondage of self. I didn't know that what I was suffering from was the bondage of self. I would have told you it was depression and anxiety and all this other kind of stuff. That's what I would have said it was, but it was the bondage of self. How do I know that? Because when I recovered from it, it was gone. Okay. Now here's what happened. As I slowly start to go through these 12 steps, my spirit starts to heal. I believe we show up with broken spirits. Listen, if you're anything at all like me, you've let everybody down that's close to you. You've broken every promise you've ever made. You've hurt the people that are closest to you. You can't be trusted. You don't show up. And if you do that enough, it's going to take a bite out of your spirit. And that's how I showed up to you. I'd lost my family. I'd lost custody of my daughter. I'd lost my jobs. I'd lost my friends. It went on and on and on. And I show up with you. My self-esteem was crushed. My spirit was crushed. And starting to go through these 12 steps, what happened is I went through them slowly and very imperfectly. My spirit started to heal, and I started to feel better, and I started to act better, and I started to have better thoughts in my head, and things just started to get better, and I started to recover from alcoholism. What do I know today? What do I know today about? Because I've been very close to Alcoholics Anonymous for 30 some years now. And I've been a card carrying member in good standing. Trust me on that, sponsoring hundreds of guys. I've been really active. What do I know about alcoholism and the recovery from it today? I believe this. I believe alcoholism, once we take the alcohol and we get separated from it, I believe alcoholism becomes a toxic experience of self-consciousness. Now, how do I describe that? What am I talking about? Well, if I'm just sober, if I'm just separated from alcohol, my experience is I'm caught up in the past or I'm caught up in the future. That's really just what's going on. And what that looks like for me is, caught up in the past, I'm thinking, my boss, what a jerk he was. I can't believe I did that. Oh, it was so embarrassing. And I can't believe I said that to her 15 years ago. I can't believe I lost my driver's license 3 times. They left me. They left me when I needed the most. That's toxic self-consciousness. Now, how that moves forward is, oh, tomorrow when I go to work, it's going to be bad. Oh, it's going to be bad. My boss is going to yell at me because I screwed up yesterday, and I'm going to yell back, and then I'm going to have to hit him. And, if I hit him, he's going to fire me. And if he fires me, I've got no money, and I'm not going to have any money, and I'm suffering from something that's not happening, is what happens in toxic self-consciousness. I'm either suffering from the past or I'm suffering from the future. And I'm wide awake to it because I don't have this. So I'm stark raving sober. Now, I believe today what the steps are all about is the steps are a personal program, a personal inner pathway to connection with the divine. So what I mean by that is I'm toxically self-conscious as a sober person. And if you don't know what I mean, go to beginners meetings. All you got to do is go to some beginners meetings and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. I go to this beginners meeting on Monday night, and the format of the meeting is, if you have less than 90 days, you're encouraged to share first. Then it's up to 6 months, and then it's up to a year, and then the rest of the group share their experience, strength, and hope. What a great format it is. Because I got to tell you, the people with less than 90 days, the self-centeredness coming off of them will blow your hair back. It's like, oh, no, my parents, they throw me out my boy, I came to the cops, and my girlfriend does oh, man. I understand so my issues, my trouble, my problems. Thanks for letting me share. It's like full blown self-centeredness, on 10. And then you see the people with like 6 months, and they're like, life still kind of sucks, but my sponsors got me looking at some stuff, and we're preparing to do a 4-step, and I'm going to meetings, and thanks for letting me share. And then the people up to a year, it's like, wow, I did my 4th and my 5th step, and I'm looking at doing some amends, and my parents let me back in the house, and my girlfriend's talking to me again, and thanks for letting me share. You see the distancing from that toxic experience of self-centeredness in the healing, in the recovery from alcoholism, right? So I believe the book Alcoholics Anonymous. It says selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of my troubles. Self-will run riot, though I usually don't think so. Various manifestations of self have defeated me. and on and on and on. Bill recognizes the solution to alcoholism is not going to be sobriety. That's not going to cut it. We're not going to be able to maintain that. It starts there, but that's not going to be the recovery from alcoholism. The recovery from alcoholism is going to be a personal program that gets us connected to a power greater than ourselves, that can do for us what we cannot do for ourselves, and enables us to rebuild our lives in every possible fashion. So that's what I understand today. That's how I understand alcoholism. So the spiritual awakening that they talk about in the 12th step, right? I didn't understand any. The thing about the steps is you're never going to understand them until you do them. You'll have an opinion on them, but you'll never understand them until you actually experience them and you actually do them. So what is it like to have a spiritual awakening? I can tell you from my own personal experience, okay? Now, a spiritual awakening does not render you perfect. And it's a good thing, because I don't like perfect people. You ever have a perfect person come over to your house, make you look bad? Everybody goes, why aren't you more like Harry? He's in law school. He's got a nice girl. Harry can go die. I'm not interested in perfection, which is a very good thing because I'm never going to be it. Okay. What the spiritual awakening renders me is useful. That's what the spiritual awakening. So what is the antidote to selfishness, self-centeredness, and self-consciousness? The antidote is service and compassion and charity. So what happens is there's an organic movement as I go through the steps toward building up a service ethic and a life of service. And I can tell you today that I have that. It's ridiculous how useful I am. And sometimes I think if these people only knew, who the hell is helping them or who the hell is talking to them. Yeah, but not just in Alcoholics Anonymous, but in my neighborhood, in my family, at my work. I just resigned from 3 boards because I'm on like 6, and it's just too much. And I took a full-time job. I was retired for a while. I took a full-time job, and I felt like working. So I just don't have a lot of time for these things. But I've been involved in this thing called a life of service, and what it's done. If you go up to a newcomer and you say, well, alcoholism is toxic self-consciousness, and you're going to have to become useful, and you're going to have to, help everybody else all the time. The newcomer's going to go, that's crazy. How the hell is that going to work for me? But that's what my experience has been. It's just what my experience has been. Now today, how do I sponsor? How am I as a sponsor? Well, Bill wrote, I forget, it's a pamphlet or something. He wrote the sponsor's main responsibility is an adequate presentation of the 12 steps, right? And he also said a group's sole responsibility is the teaching and practice of the 12 steps. So understanding that I'm dealing with alcoholics, I have to take this 12-step thing, this recovery thing, seriously. So as a sponsor, I do that. I help people become convinced of their own powerlessness. I help them, come to the conclusion that there's a power greater than themselves that they can gain access to, that will relieve them of this merciless obsession to put alcohol in their body, and bring them to a place where they'll feel happily and usefully whole. I help them make a decision to go through this process. I help them understand what the 4th step is and how to do the 4th step. I'll do the 5th step with them. They can do it with somebody else if they want. I'll explain to them the concepts of step 6 and 7 of willingness and humility, and how I must engage with this power greater than myself to have any hope of having these defects of character removed. I explain to them that to be truly free, one must put a list together of the people in the institutions that they've harmed, and go out and make direct amends to those people and institutions. They need to start practicing spiritual principles in real time. When and where those spiritual principles are applicable, they need to apply them. They need to pray. They need to meditate. They need to practice some of our spiritual disciplines upon awakening, retiring at night, and they need to take their experience out, and they need to carry the message to other alcoholics. They need to sponsor people. Totally uninterested in sponsoring people that aren't going to sponsor. You know what I mean? Now, the thing that I've run into in Alcoholics Anonymous, working with others, is sometimes you can't get past a concept with an alcoholic that they're convinced of. And this is the concept. I may not really have to, I'm unconvinced I will have to do that in my case. I'm unconvinced I'll have to do a 4-step in my case. I'm unconvinced I'll have to pay all the money back in my case. I'm unconvinced I'll have to work with other people in my case. And that's the most difficult thing I've run up against with sponsoring, because sometimes it's you just can't get past some. And what that is that is a first step problem. When that happens, somebody that's unwilling to make amends doesn't understand powerlessness. They don't understand the first step. They have not come to the conclusion that there's a power greater than themselves that is going to be necessary for their survival. They're unconvinced of that. And sometimes I can't do much for that. Let me tell you just a little bit. I've got a few minutes left. Let me tell you a little bit about today. So I told you I retired. What happened was COVID hit. Had a good job. COVID hit. Got furloughed. Never got unfurloughed. So about a year into this, I decided, listen, I'm at that age, right? I got some 401k. I can hook into Social Security, and just chill. And I did that. And so I'm really, really busy with a lot of Alcoholics Anonymous stuff. But I also want to tell you that there's something that I love to do. I absolutely love to do. And you want to know what that is? Nothing. I love doing nothing. Okay. You ever just do nothing? It's like really contemplative, and you're just kind of chilling, and there's like no pressure, you're existing, you're humaning. Now, I really like doing that. And one day I'm sitting there doing nothing, and my wife comes in and she says, "What are you doing?" "Nothing." And nothing. So that and a few other things, what it did was it led me to come to the conclusion that I've got some horsepower left in my life, and a job came up down the street, and I'm way overqualified for this job, but that's a good thing when it's like a retirement job, when it's like a cruising off into the sunset kind of a job. Being overqualified is a good thing, right? And let me tell you what it is. I'm a facility manager by career. And I had the highfalutin facility management jobs, right? I was running pharmaceutical research and development sites. I was running pharmaceutical manufacturing sites. Yeah, and so, for me to take this job I had to be my humility had to be, operative for me to take this job, right? But I got to tell you, it's the perfect job. And you know what it is? I'm the facility manager of a hospice organization. And I go in and I make sure that the heat and the air conditioning and the water and the electricity and the grounds and the food service and the custodial service and all the fire alarm drills and all the safety and all that stuff is being taken care of for this hospice organization. So I'm involved in making sure that the people that are in there are comfortable. And I've got to tell you, I've had the opportunity to do this several times just recently. Give some of us our last meeting. And I got to tell you, what an amazing experience that is. Because of course we're going to end up, in a situation like that. And we're not hard to spot. Lung cancer, liver cancer, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand what's going on. And I'll go in and I'll talk to the people who've been in recovery. I'll talk to the people who haven't. And I'll be able to just help somebody a little bit go into the next room, whether I'm, making them comfortable or I'm talking with them. And I got to tell you, I can't tell you how much I love this job. And I don't know that I've ever loved jobs. I've been okay with jobs, and there's been periods of time when jobs have been cool, but I don't know that I've ever loved a job before, and I love that today. And I'm useful. I'm useful in my family. My sister my sister had an event not long ago where she's had like 30 heart attacks and strokes and diabetic and overweight, and she was just a science experiment. She ended up intubated in a hospital in New York. And I went in and listen, I know, my wife knows, my wife is a hospice nurse. We knew there was not going to be a good outcome from this, right? She's got every tube in the world. They're keeping her alive with all this stuff, but she's alert. She can think. And I was able to have the conversation with her. What do you want? What do you want? You want to hang in there on all this stuff? Do you want to be extubated? Do you what do you want? What do you want? How do you want to finish the show? And I was able to find out, and I wasn't making it about me. The thing when I was toxically self-conscious was I would make a funeral about me. I would say, some bitch died on me. Now I got to get dressed up in a suit and go to a wake. I hate wakes. I'm able to, without that toxic bondage to self, to go out and find ways to be uniquely useful to people, and especially other alcoholics. And I used to hate it when people said, my name's so-and-so, I'm a grateful alcoholic. I used to want to go out and slash their tires, to see just how grateful they were. My name is Chris, and I'm a grateful alcoholic. And Kevin, thank you for asking me to be here.